Well, good morning, Bayshore. Good to see everybody. Welcome to our 10:30 service here at Millsboro. So good to see you guys. Hey, I want to give a big shout out to everybody that helped with Serve Day yesterday. It was so amazing. Let's give everybody that helped a big hand. Thank you guys so much for serving. So incredible. What a great day we had, and it was just so awesome. Thank you for being a part of helping our community, and every campus was engaged, and we just had hundreds of people serving. It was just so wonderful to be a part of that. I loved it myself, and it was just so great to get to hang out with some of you guys. Anyhow, welcome to Bayshore. If you are new to Bayshore, I'm Pastor Danny, and I am delighted to be a part of today's service and to share some. We're in a series called Baggage Claim, and we've been dealing with the baggage of Christianity, the things that people struggle with Christianity and the Bible, and just really looking at those things. And we're going to be doing this series for 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks, and then we'll be done. And then we got this summer, we're doing a series called Be Happy on the book of Philippians. We've been dealing with so many heavy things in the Baggage Claim series. We're going to do a Be Happy series in the summer, but just so glad that you have been a part of that and learning as we look at these issues that people have trouble with Christianity. And today we're going to be looking at one of the other ones. We've talked about hell. We talked about the exclusivity of Christianity. We talked about suffering, and today we're going to be talking about science and why people struggle with Christianity. They will infer that Christianity is out of touch with science and that we are just blindly believing whatever we read and aren't really engaging in our thinking. The people that are deconstructing from the faith, that's a new term. I don't know how long it's been around, but the idea is that people are deconstructing from the faith, saying, I'm not going to go to church anymore, or I'm not going to be a Christian anymore because of these issues. And one of the issues that comes up is the issue of science. And they look at science as being something that is in conflict with Christianity. I love what Mark Clark in his book, The Problem with God, wrote. He kind of set it up this way, and he says this. He said, how often we turn on the television and heard the host say, tonight we'll be talking about faith versus science. Our first guest is a former University of Oxford professor, evolutionary biologist, and best-selling author. He believes that science, not faith, holds the answer to all questions. On the other side, on the other side of the aisle, we have Joe Smith, who will speak on the legitimacy of faith and Christianity. Joe homeschools his kids, thinks Oprah's the Antichrist, and lives in a swamp. So a little different view there. You know, I think sometimes Christianity is kind of characterized that way, that we are people that really don't think about the issues, and we don't really think about science. My granddaughter Willow Grace is now, in her teenage years and embracing and thinking about things in science, and we've been having some good conversations about that. Christianity and science sort of came into conflict with each other beginning in 1925 in Dayton, Tennessee, when we have the Scope trial, the famous Scope trials. When I was at Salisbury University, I wrote a paper on the Scopes trials, and it was basically a big event in 1925, and I think became a definitive moment in church history in America, and how church and science began to relate together. So what happened at the Scopes trial is John Scopes was a high school teacher in Dayton, Tennessee, and wanted to teach evolution in the public school there. And then there was a trial involved, and everybody all over the country put their eyes on Dayton, Tennessee, as William Jennings Bryan, who was a senator from Nebraska. William Jennings Bryan was the senator that was representing the Christian side of the debate. And then you had Clarence Darrow, who was a civil liberties lawyer from Chicago, atheist, I believe, and he was representing the side of science. So when you get into that, research the history of that, and you look at what happened, the Christian perspective really took a punch in the nose in that debate. And William Jennings Bryan was a great orator, but he was not very good at defending the faith in terms of science. And he was maybe one of the best orators in the 1900s. Incredible speaker. And his big one-liner in the debate when Clarence Darrow was talking to him about paleontology and talking to him about the rocks and what the evidence says about the age of the earth and all that, William Jennings Bryan said, "I don't care about those rocks. All I care about is the Rock of Ages." And that was the headline. So it's basically, I don't care about what the evidence says, or I don't care about what paleontology says. I just care about the Rock of Ages. So at that point on, there became this divide between science and Christianity in America. Now, I want to talk to you this morning a little bit about how that's not true, how that science and Christianity should not be at loggerheads and have not been at loggerheads for most of history. Now, here's something that's historically true. Historically, it's true that it was Christianity in Europe that gave birth to science. Science was born out of the monasteries, out of the schools that were established by churches in Europe, and Christianity was the mother of science, that science came out of Christian academics. And so it's not at all historically at odds. When I hear some of these deconstructionists, these young people that maybe haven't done their research, that say that science and Christianity are at odds with each other, I just am appalled that they don't know more about the real story of science and Christianity. So very, very interesting. So here's one of the things that I think are important for us to remember. We need to remember that many of the great scientists in history have been Christians, have been staunch believers in God, have not been atheists, but have really, some of them have admitted that they found the Lord because of science. So science is not the antithesis of Christianity, and science really doesn't point away from God. It doesn't point away from the reality of God, but rather it points to the reality of God. So let me give you a couple examples of people in history. There's a wonderful guy by the name of Russell Calburn. He's a Cambridge professor, and his field is experimental physics. And he writes this: understanding more science doesn't make God smaller. It allows us to see his creative activity in more detail. Now, that's an interesting thing. He says, understanding more science doesn't make God smaller. It allows us to see his creative activity in more detail. And then you've got this guy by the name of Robert Millikan. Robert Millikan was an American physicist that won the Nobel Peace Prize, the Nobel Prize in 1923 on special work in electronics. And here's what Robert Millikan says. He said, I can assert most definitely that the denial of faith lacks any scientific basis. I can assert most definitely that the denial of faith lacks any scientific basis. In my view, there will never be true contradiction between faith and science. So this is a really, really smart guy. Really smart guy that knows science, that knows, the minute details of the scientific process. And he says, listen, there's never any real contradiction between science and the Bible and Christianity. Here's a guy that won the Crawford Prize, which is like the Nobel Prize, Alan Sandage. He's a 21st century astronomer. He says, I was practically an atheist in my childhood. Science was what led me to the conclusion that the world is much more complex than we can explain. I can only explain the mystery of existence to myself by the supernatural. So this guy says, listen, it wasn't science that pushed me away from God, but it was science that brought me to God. So the idea that science is, over here and Christians are over here as ostriches putting their heads in the ground is simply not true. It's not true. It's not historically true. Now, here's a guy that you'll know this name, Isaac Newton. How many have ever heard of Isaac Newton? Just raise your hand. Isaac Newton was a believer in the Lord. He was a believer in the Lord. And, when you take physical science in first year of college or in high school, you studied Newton's laws, the law that everything stays at rest, inertia, unless acted on by an outside source. That was Newton, and Newton says every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you drop a rubber ball on the ground, that action of gravity will have an opposite reaction to it. That was Isaac Newton that got all of that thinking. When I was in University of Delaware in science class, one of the things that Isaac Newton was famous for was how to split white light. You put white light through a prism, and that would split the light. And I remember sitting in class, and the professor, the University of Delaware science professor, was so excited about Newton's discovery about splitting white light. And we all sat there, and he did the demonstration and saw how light can be deflected, and it's very interesting. But he never admitted where Newton got that inspiration from. Isaac Newton was a man that believed in God, a man that read the Bible, a man that loved the Lord, and a man that had a profound relationship with the Lord. Isaac Newton said, "The most beautiful system of sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from counsel and dominion of an intelligent being. This being governs all things, not as the soul of the world, but as Lord over all. The supreme God is a being eternal, infinite, and absolutely perfect." I never heard that in science class. My professor never told me that about Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton, when he looked at the universe, he saw the handiwork of God. And it says in Psalm 19, "The heavens declare the glory of God." If you look through a telescope and you look at those planets, you'll see the eternal handiwork of God. When Edwin Hubble in 1929, when he discovered the red shift in the planets, which means that the planets are moving away from us, all of a sudden there was a discovery that there was a beginning to the universe, that the universe had a beginning, it had a starting point. Now, it used to be like this. There used to be a steady state universe. Now, what is a steady state universe? A steady state universe was believed that the universe existed forever. The universe existed forever. And so if the universe existed forever, there was no need for someone to create the universe. And when we look at Genesis chapter 1, the first words of the Bible, we read, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Now, Edwin Hubble, when he saw that these planets are moving away from us, he concluded, and a lot of scholars concluded, that there was a point in time with all of a sudden energy and matter and time was created. And listen, everything that's created has a cause. Everything that's created has a cause. Things that are not created do not have a cause. So if the earth was created, the earth had a cause. And that cause we call God, that God created the heavens and the earth. And a lot of people, when Hubble made that discovery, were like really nervous. Oh my goodness, if the universe had a beginning, then somebody had to start the universe. I was like riding down the road the other day, and I'm trying to think of the name of the road I was riding down, and I was riding down this road, Sheep Pen Road. If living around Millsboro, if you live in Plantation Lakes, you know where Sheep Pen Road is. I remember when Sheep Pen Road had nothing on it. There was nothing on Sheep Pen Road. Now it's like New York City. You got buildings going everywhere. And you got two roundabouts, just like you're in London. And I was riding down the road, and Sheep Pen Road, and I saw a drone flying, and it was just hovering over the swimming pool area. And I'm just fascinated with drones. And I was looking at drones, and you know what? It made me realize, I know that drone did not magically assemble itself and all of a sudden, magically on its own, begin to fly and hover over a Sheep Pen Road. There was somebody that designed the drone, and then there's somebody that's manipulating the movement of the drone. You know what the Bible says in the book of Colossians? That through Jesus, everything was made, and there is nothing made that was not made by him. That Jesus made everything. He made the drone of the universe. He made everything. And then he holds everything together. The laws of Isaac Newton were written in the universe by the finger of Jesus. So that's what I think is so exciting. So Isaac Newton wasn't this like a sarcastic, kind of negative, unbelieving, didn't believe in God. He wasn't an atheist. He believed in God, and he saw these wonderful creations. Here's what I believe. The laws that Newton discovered in his scientific studies were laws that were inspired by God to help him understand. Here's what Isaac Newton goes on to say. He said, listen to this, no sciences are better attested. Now, the word sciences there is the word for knowledge or understanding. No sciences or no field of study are better attested than the religion of the Bible. That was Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton said that. He said there's no other field of study that has better evidence to support its validity than the Bible. And he didn't say, he's not saying that, the universe has great order to it. There must be a being up there. He goes further than that. He says the God of the Bible. So some people, when they discover the wonderful design of the universe, they have to come to a conclusion that there is some supreme intelligent being, and then they have to go on a quest for that. Isaac Newton understood that the being behind the creation was the God of the Bible. So when I hear some young person, and thank God for young people, and all that, we love every generation of Bishop. When I hear some guy in skinny jeans playing a guitar that doesn't know theology, that doesn't know science, that says, hey, listen, I'm deconstructing from the faith because I don't believe that the Bible supports science. That guy does not know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to the history of science, nor the intricacies of science as well. Well, Isaac Newton says the admirable arrangement and harmony of the universe could only have come from the plan of an omniscient and omnipotent being, an all-knowing being, and an all-powerful being. Well, here's another guy, and I got tons of these. I could spend the next hour going through these quotes from these scientists. Some are in ancient history, some are in modern history. MIT has got so many scientists there that are believers in God, that love God, has some interesting things. It's interesting, you seem to find more faith in the science department than you do in the psychology department in universities. And so here's a guy, we know this, Christians are always told, well, the Bible believes that promotes that the sun revolved around the earth, because it says in the book of Psalms, from the rising of the sun to the setting down of the same, the Lord's name is to be praised. So therefore, Christians believe that the sun revolves around the earth, and the Bible teaches that. Well, Christians don't believe that, but the Bible teaches that, so therefore the Bible is debunked. Well, that's such a crazy thing, and that's called phenomenalism. Phenomenalism is when something appears a certain way, and the Psalms are poems, and the poem is talking about what looks to be from the human eye's perspective. If you watch the news tonight and the weather report is on, what's he going to say about what time the sunrise is? He say the sunrise is at 6:03 a.m. He's using language that the Bible uses, but we know that that's not what's really happening. So that is a bogus idea. And some people come up and say, oh, look what it says in the book of Psalms, that the Bible says the sun rises. And anyhow, but there was a guy, the guy that taught us that that our solar system and our planet revolves around the sun. The guy that taught us that is a Christian man. A man that knew the Lord, and a man that was really committed to the Lord. His name was Nicholas Copernicus. You've heard of Copernicus. And before Copernicus, the Greeks had taught the world that the earth is the center of our solar system and the sun revolves around. That came from Aristotle. That did not come from the Bible. So when you get Copernicus comes along, and he lives in the 16th century, he comes and he says, listen, here's how it works. He said that the sun is the center star of our particular galaxy, and everything revolves around the sun. Here's what he said. He said the sun is like God, the planets are like Jesus, and the other bodies are like the Holy Spirit. He illustrated his view, the heliocentric view of the universe, in biblical terms, because that's what he believes. And here's what he says. He said, who could live in close contact with the most consummate order and divine wisdom and not feel drawn to the loftiest aspirations? Who could not adore the architect of all these things? You know what he says? If you listen to what he says, he's saying, when I look at the heavens, when I see that the sun is like God and we revolve around the sun, our lives are to revolve around the sun, he's saying, when I look at the universe and I look in the sky, it makes me want to adore the Lord. It makes me want to worship the Lord. The scientists of other generations were not cynical. We're not cynical about God. They worshiped God as they saw the universe. And what's exciting now is we see more and more scientists that are coming to faith and are becoming leading figures in leading us to worship. Here's what Copernicus goes on to say, and I got one other guy, I could just go on, but Copernicus says this: to know the mighty works of God, to comprehend his wisdom and majesty and power, to appreciate in degree the wonderful working of his laws, surely all this must be pleasing and acceptable mode of worship to the Most High, to whom ignorance cannot be more grateful than knowledge. I love it. It's so exciting to see that. Well, one more, maybe one and a half more. How about Kepler, Johannes Kepler? Kepler was the guy that invented and understood how the planets move in motion. How they move in motion. And he discovered that they don't move in a circle, they move in an elliptical shape. And he was a key figure. And so Kepler said this, he said, my Lord and my Creator, I would like to proclaim the magnificence of your works to men to the extent that my limited intelligence can understand. And then he says, the chief end of all investigation of the external world should be to discover the rational order and harmony which has been imposed on it by God, which he has revealed to us in the language of mathematics. So anyhow, that's really amazing. Albert, here's a good one. Thomas Edison, this will be the last one. Thomas Edison. How many know who Thomas Edison is? We need him for the light bulb, right? Thomas Edison, great inventor. He had 1,200 patents. Thomas Edison said this, listen, my utmost respect and admiration to all the engineers, especially the greatest of them all, God. Thomas Edison said the greatest engineer of all time is the Lord. This week I read about a guy named Dr. Fazal Rana. He was raised in a Muslim home, and he was his dad was a Muslim, His mom was a non-practicing Catholic. He was raised without any faith. He goes to undergrad school, and he begins to study, in undergrad school, biochemics. And as he got to graduate school, he began to look at the intricate design of the human genome. And the more he studied, he said, I could not believe the incredible design of the biochemical systems in our bodies. And he said, this can't be an accident. So he did more research, and this biochemist that's now a PhD and leads Reasons to Believe, a wonderful organization, Fuz Reyna, says that he came to faith in the Lord because when he looked at science, and science didn't push him away from God, but he pushed him to God. He pushed him to God. And so this man was given, he actually bought a New Testament. He read the book of Matthew, never knew the Lord. Science led him to the Lord. He saw the hand of God. He said, what God is it? He checked out Islam. He checked out all that his dad had raised him in. That didn't work. And he got the Gospel of Matthew. And he read the Sermon on the Mount. And he saw how winsome Jesus was. And he fell in love with Jesus. And this man who was led to God through science got on his knees and received the Lord and has dedicated his life to serving us to help us to understand science better. So that's a whole lot of stuff there. So let me just talk about a few things. There's no way I'm going to get all this done. One of the things that we have to talk about is evolution. Evolution is probably what's behind some of the deconstructed people that are deconstructing from the faith. And the whole idea of evolution. My granddaughter, Willow, says, she's studying evolution now. She's so smart. She's beat me in chess the last 2 weeks in a row, and that's really bothering me a lot. But anyhow, I'm going to beat her this week. Anyhow, so she's talking to me about this, and I said, well, Willow, this whole evolutionary thing, there's a whole lot of variables to this. And one, there's 3 kinds of evolution. There's unguided evolution where you just think everything happens, and you just happen somehow, And that's why the beginning of the universe 14 billion years ago is important. Because the universe began 14 billion years ago. When you get to Genesis, you're in the middle of the story. God's putting things in order that's already been created. But when the earth finally gets to its formation where we got the right conditions for life on it, it's a pretty small window. It's a lot smaller than 14 billion years ago. And so you don't have near as much time for evolution to work itself out to happen. But I said to her, hey, listen, there's unguided, and then there's theistic evolution where God's hand is supposed to guide that. And I remember when I was in high school, and I'm sitting in biology class, and Mr. Stewart's teaching evolution. I'm sitting there, and he knows me. He knows I'm a Christian, as my dad's a pastor. His daughter comes to my dad's church and to our youth group, and I don't think he's a Christian, but his daughter comes to our church, and he's teaching evolution. He said, Danny, I want you to know, hey, don't worry, God's hand is involved in all this. And so, hey, theistic evolution, there's people that believe that know the Lord and all that, and I surely respect that. But I want to tell you something about this. Here's the deal. The real deal is nobody knows why they believe in evolution. Nobody really knows why they believe in it. If you look up the charts that you saw in high school of the tree, it's pretty much the same as it was then. And people aren't honest. And I'm all for evolution being taught in school. It should be taught in school. We need to be open, learn about stuff. But you got to teach it intellectually honest, and it's not taught honestly. Now, here's a quote, an important quote for you to know. R.C. Sproul, he's in front of a class. I think he was teaching an undergrad class somewhere in Pennsylvania. He asked the students, how many of you believe in evolution? All 30 of them raised their hand. He said, who here can explain to me why you believe in evolution in detail? Explain that. Not one of them can do that. I guarantee you that anybody in this audience today, if I said, if you've subscribed to evolution, whatever, most people cannot articulate why they believe in evolution and why it is now scientifically valid. Now, here's a guy I'm going to quote to you. He's not a Christian. He's an atheist. He's a famous paleontologist at Harvard University. And his name is Stephen Jay Gould. And here's what he said. Stephen Jay Gould says, the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. It's the trade secret of paleontology, the rarity of transitional forms. When our kids are taught evolution in school, we need a teacher that's going to be honest about that. The transitional forms are just not there. They're not there. And this is not from a Christian guy that works for Focus on the Family that wants it to be true. This is from a guy that doesn't believe in God, that's honest enough to say that they're not there. The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference. The rest is inference. So I just want to say to my student friends and for our younger generations that are going through high school and all of that, hey, listen, don't let anybody do your thinking for you. Don't let anybody do your thinking for you. Just because everybody says they believe something, you still have to ask the question, why is this true? Why is this true? Now, I got a ton of other quotes here. Here's a good one, though. The production of new animal species, this is from Paul and Anna Elkrich. The production of new animal species in nature has yet to be documented. Furthermore, in the vast majority of cases, the rate of change is so slow that it's not even been possible to detect an increase in the amount of differentiations. So here's the deal. So we look in the heavens, we see the hand of God. Michael, this guy, this Faz Reina, this Muslim, when he didn't look in the skies, but when he looked in the human cell and the DNA, you have 30 to 40 trillion DNA in your body. And here's something interesting. 99% of our DNA in our body is identical. That means that all of us have 99% of the same DNA in our body. It's only the 1% that makes us different. So why don't you turn to your neighbor, really do this right. Turn to your neighbor and say, you and I are just about the same. Just turn to him right now and say, you and I are just about the same. As you look next to you, I know that really scares some of you. Oh my gosh. But DNA contains so much information that it's unbelievable. And here's something, I want you to listen to this. There's a guy from MIT University. His last name is Bath, Michael Bath. He's done research and to demonstrate how much information DNA can store. And right now in your body, your DNA is giving instructions how your cell works, it's a copying machine. It copies your cells so you can reproduce. It copies your cells how how you move and how you govern, how life exists in your body. It's all governed by the information in your DNA. If I took one strand of DNA out of your body and I pulled out just one strand, it would stretch 6.5 feet tall. So we got DNA in your body that's everywhere. And here's what Michael Bath says from MIT University. If you filled a coffee cup with DNA, all the information in the world could be stored in that DNA. Every encyclopedia set, every medical journal, every email, every Shakespeare book, every bit of information could be stored in the whole world in a DNA that's in your body. And so this coffee cup represents the power of your DNA. God created your DNA. You have, in your cells, you have a thing called flagellum. Flagellum. Here's a picture of flagellum. Flagellum is an interesting, I think we have a picture of flagellum. Maybe we don't. There it is. That's it. That's the one I want. Flagellum, if you look at it, it's like a little machine. It's basically the Uber driver in your cells. It carries things around. It's got a little motor on it that makes it move around. It's intricately designed. And here's the problem with evolution. If you took one of these pieces out of this flagellum, it wouldn't work. Darwin says that if you get a little bit at a time, things will work a little bit, and then you get more, it'll work better. This doesn't work at all if one piece is missing. In other words, the designer had to design it and put it together all at once and make it work. See, there's lots of problems with that. Let me put it down where we can understand. This is where we are all at. We can understand this. How many know what a mousetrap is? See a mousetrap? I think we got a picture of a mousetrap. Here's a mousetrap. There's a mousetrap. A mousetrap has several pieces. You take one of those pieces out and that mousetrap doesn't work. This is called irreducible complexity. Irreducible complexity. And that's one of the problems when evolution is taught. Nobody teaches the irreducible complexity. They will call it pseudoscience. And when you start throwing names around, you're losing the argument. I've heard people say, well, that's just pseudoscience to say irreducible complexity, things don't work. There's a wonderful guy, Michael Behe from, I think he teaches in Lehigh University, has got all kinds of great research on all this. So here's the idea. You got all this DNA. You got these little machines in you that are designed to work. And you got all this information that's inside of your body that God has designed so that you can grow, so you can live, so you can scratch your nose when you need to. Everything in your body has a minute design. And that DNA is filled with information. Now, and it's got very detailed information of what your cells are supposed to do and all that. So I don't know if you remember, anybody remember Alphabet's cereal? Do you remember Alphabet cereal? Hold your hands up if you remember Alphabet cereal. There it is right there. It's not available anymore. I went to the grocery store yesterday to get some, and they don't make it anymore. That's sad. That's a sad event right there. They don't make that anymore. You can get a box on eBay for $50, but anyhow, but the alphabets you can make, when you're a kid, you could spell words in your spoon and all that. So I don't have a box of alphabets, but I got Frosted Cheerios. So pretend this is alphabets. How many can do that? Pretend. Okay, it's full of alphabets. I put a white blanket in front of me, and I shake out, mix it all up, and I shake out the whole box of alphabets. And I walk on the other side, and I read the words in perfect order of the Constitution of the United States. How many think that that's going to happen? It's not going to happen. There has to be intelligence behind that to make those words appear. Your DNA is like that. Your DNA has sophisticated information. And if we say that random things happen without the creative work of God, that things just came about. There was an optometrist that was feeding his little boy cereal in the high chair one day, and he was not a believer, and he's feeding his little boy cereal, and he's looking at the beautiful eyes of his little boy, and he sees those eyes, and all of a sudden he began to realize the intricacy of the human eye is so amazing that it could not have happened by accident. I was listening to a doctor this week on a creation podcast I found on Spotify that said that when you turn your head this way, around your eye, there's two muscles that are involved in balancing your eye, so when you turn your head, your eye can still see straight ahead and see what's going on. Let me tell you something. The Bible says in Psalm 139, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. He watched over my innermost being as I was being created. And He set us over the work of His hands and all the creatures on the earth. Let me tell you something. I want you to hear this. I know we love our pets, we love our dogs, we love our cats, we love our goldfish, we love our animals. We love our animals. Let me tell you something. You and your dog are not peers. You are at a higher level. I say that at Fenwick Island. I say that at Rehoboth. It's controversial. Let me tell you something. People love their dogs. Maybe in Gunbar we're a little more, maybe more common sense. I don't know. Please do not put that on the tape. That should not be on the tape. You are special. You are made in God's image. My little grandson, Nixon, I want you to learn everything you can about science. I want you to understand evolution. I want you to understand all this stuff. I want you to be good in calculus. I want you to understand math. But let me tell you something. You're made in the image of God. Don't you ever grow up thinking that you're just a product of some random forces. God himself formed you. When the book of Genesis says that when man was made, God spoke a lot of things into existence. But when man was made, God got down on his knees and he formed us out of the dust, and it's demonstrating the intimate involvement of God's creation in us, and we are the crown of God's creation. You are the crown of God's creation. You'll read and you'll hear more and more in media about we're just part of the animal species. We're all the same. We want to take care of the animals, and all. We should take care of the animals. People that don't treat animals right, that's terrible. We need to fix all that. But let me tell you something. We are the crown of God's creation. And you're made in his image. And you're unique. That 1% difference of DNA was designed by God to make you laugh the way you laugh, to give you blue eyes, to give you hair and not give you hair. God is a personal God in creating you personal. Everybody hold up your thumb right now. Just hold your thumb up. Every single thumbprint here is different. Every thumbprint's different. So I'm going to close with this. I'm really over at Fenwick Island. I won't, but I was sitting on the deck the other night, and no other morning I got up early, got my coffee ready, and my black coffee, and it's a beautiful morning. Karen's asleep in the bedroom. She's in a coma. She's not going to wake up for a while. So I'm sitting on the deck, and I've got everything I need. I got Jesus, and I got coffee. That's all you need in life. Jesus and coffee. I'm sitting there, and over the sky above me, a big crane flies over. We have a body of water not too far, and a big crane flew over. Looked like a Boeing 747. I mean, this big crane flew over. And I looked at it. It was so beautiful. It was just majestic. It was big and flying with those big wings. And it wasn't just moments later that I saw a bald eagle fly right over my backyard. I looked at that bald eagle fly by. And then a flock of ducks came the opposite direction. I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, and I'm seeing in the sky that God created. I'm seeing his creatures dance in the sky for my pleasure. Back in the 70s, I listened to Barry McGuire. He wrote a famous song, Eve of Destruction, and then became a Christian, and he did a lot of Christian songs. I heard him on album in a concert once, and he was saying that when he was 14 years old, he lived in St. Pedro, California, and he was working on the fishing boats. And when he was 16, he said in the summer he was working on the fishing boats, and he said they were coming back in to Terminal Island, to the fish canneries there with a load of fish, and he was on the afternoon wheel watch at the top of the boat there with the wheel. And he said, I saw off to the starboard side, I saw something in my peripheral vision, and it was a dolphin coming my way. And the dolphin was coming his way, and he banged on the board in front of him, and the guy came up and took his place, and the dolphin comes right up to the front of that boat. And Barry McGuire said, I want to reach over, I want to hug him, I want to do something. I couldn't reach him. He said, I ran into the galley, and I got a big dish towel, and I tied a knot in it. And he said, I whacked that dolphin. And he said that dolphin went way down in the water and jumped out of the water and looked at him like, what the world's that? And then he whacked him again, and finally the dolphin goes off, and he goes back up to his wheel watch, and he's there. And then he said, I see about 30 dolphins coming my way. And Barry McGuire said that He went down there with that tea towel, and for the next 30 or 40 minutes, he just whacking dolphins. You know, those dolphins are jumping around. He's whacking those dolphins, and then they begin to break away, and then finally one's left, and he said, I think that last one was the first one, he says. And I gave him a final whack with a towel, and he went off. And Barry McGuire said, I'm sitting on the boat, and I heard this voice in my heart. He said, I heard the Lord say, you see those dolphins, Barry? I made those dolphins for your pleasure. I made those dolphins for your pleasure. And Barry McGuire's right. Everything in creation was made by God for your pleasure. Every bird, every deer running through the field, every beautiful butterfly, every bright blue bird that's feeding in your birdhouse, He made those things for your pleasure because you are unique. You're unique. You're made in His image. You know, I don't believe I'm an accident. I don't believe I'm a product of random forces. I don't believe that. I believe that one day God, in His creative work, formed me with a personality that I have. He formed my mind. He formed my personality. He made me in His image for His glory. I want to ask you to lift up your hands to the Lord this morning. It's not crazy to believe in God. It's rational to believe in God. It says in John chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And everything that was made by the Word. The word there is logos. It means rationality, reason. God is a reasonable God, and He's created us in His image. Now, Father, as we raise our kids and as we live in a highly agnostic and hostile world, Lord, let our faith be firmly planted in the truth of who we really are. Help us with our identity to see that we have great value. We love You, Lord. We worship You, Lord, because You're the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and You made us, and You have a great purpose for our life. In Jesus' name. And everybody said amen and amen.